Hello and welcome to Mindful Living, where we explore the art of living with the intention, balance, and inner peace. I am Avik, your host, guiding you through conversations on health, meditation, mental well being, mindfulness, and the mind body connection. Each episode features expert insights to help you grow, heal, and thrive. So, take a deep breath, relax, and join us on this journey to a more mindful and fulfilling life. So, let's get started.
Hello and welcome, listeners, to another episode of the Mindful Living podcast, where we explore mindfulness, personal growth, and the art of living a balanced life. I'm your host, Sana, and today we have a very special guest with us, Jim Laird, a seasoned strength and conditioning coach who has worked with everyone from professional athletes to everyday individuals. With a career spanning over 2 decades, Jim's motto of training smarter, not harder, has helped countless clients achieve their fitness and wellness goals. But Jim's journey isn't just about physical strength, listeners. He has a deep understanding of the importance of silence, stillness, and the outdoors in achieving overall holistic well being. Currently living a simple outdoor focused life in Nicaragua, Jim brings a unique blend of fitness, nature, and mindfulness to his coaching. And today, here on the Mindful Living podcast, we'll explore the art of silence and how being still can transform not just our fitness, but our entire approach to life. So, Jim, welcome to the show, and it's an absolute honor having you with us.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
So, Jim, you have had a fascinating career in strength and conditioning. So, how did your journey lead you to prioritize stillness and silence as essential components of health and wellness?
Well, that's really a deep question that encompasses many years of making many mistakes. Basically, I started out as an athlete, training hard, working a lot of hours, and a lot of that was to overcome insecurities and trauma from my youth, and trying to fill that void and using strength training and just being busy to manage anger, frustration. I just couldn't sit still. I had a really hard time being still. And a lot of that was just wasn't comfortable with myself. So through some various health challenges, I kind of learned the hard way that silence, particularly in our modern world today, we have so many distractions with phones and technology. People just don't spend time outside, particularly in the West, the United States, Canada. The power of silence, silence, as it says in Psalms, be still and know. I seriously, and if you look at most major religious figures throughout history, they usually go into the wilderness to
Yes.
kind of get their bearings, everything from Christ to Muhammad to, the different religious figures, Gandhi, they all valued silence in nature. And there's a reason for that. And if you can't sit quietly, the reason for that, for me personally, was not being able to deal with some of the thoughts and some of the things, the demons I was wrestling with. And it makes you very uncomfortable when you have to deal with these things. So you get on your phone, you scroll, you work, you drive yourself. And a lot of people get a lot of, what the world calls a success from being driven from a lot of these things that we're dealing with. But eventually you have to deal with them because it's just an underlying stress that you end up, for me, I ended up getting an autoimmune disease. And a very wise guy named Paul Chek said something very profound to me. There's nothing wrong with working out. There's nothing wrong with working hard, but we need that balance. We need the yin and the yang. We need the working in. It's called working in. And that's what you put gas back in your tank. You put money back on your credit card. Life makes us spend our resources, and we've got to constantly put those resources back into our system. But most people today are just constantly maxing out their credit cards, so to speak, literally, figuratively, and literally. And
Yeah.
so that time in nature, that time in silence is what allows us to restore our soul, restore our mind, and bring balance back. Just like you need light and you need darkness. And I compare modern life to getting in your vehicle, getting in your car, starting it up, leaving it in park, and just revving the daylights out of it all day.
Mhm.
You don't really go anywhere, but you end up exhausted and emotionally, physically, spiritually. And so it's so important to take time for silence, go out in nature, listen to the birds, take some breaths, relax, make the time to be still, and allow your body and your brain to do the natural things, the decompression. We need some boredom. We need some slow down time. We need to sit down and eat and chew our food and relax. Most people are in a chronic state of just underlying stress constantly.
That's really very, very true. And thank you so much for highlighting this for all of us, Jim. And of course, as you rightly said, in today's fast-paced world, many people they struggle to embrace stillness. Uh, they become anxious. So, why do you think silence and mindfulness are so difficult to achieve, especially in this
Well,
age? And how can we start incorporating them into our daily routines?
Well, your body adapts to what you're used to, right? So I've done a lot of work in I did some high end security work in my early 20s all over the world with some very high level special forces guys. You know, Spasnov, French Foreign Legion, SAS, Navy SEALs. And these guys are used to being in combat situations, high stress. And we'd be at a cafe and they'd be just twitching and they'd be smoking multiple cigarettes and they just weren't comfortable. But then we'd get in a situation where there'd be conflict or gunfire or some sort of stress. And all of a sudden they would calm down and relax and they'd start asking me how my family was doing. And I'm like, dude, there's a dude over there that's shooting at us. Like, and you're asking me about how my family's doing? Because their normal was stress and chaos. That became their normal. And so people are so used to scrolling, they're so used to like spinning in their head. Their body gets used to living in that stress state. That's why I'm a huge fan of things like neurofeedback,
Mhm.
where you can actually see what the brain is doing. And a lot of times the brain gets in a loop or a breathing pattern where you're over breathing, you're in this stress state, and it feels great at first
Mhm.
until you spend all your resources. You're producing too much cortisol, your blood sugar's all over the place. So people start medicating themselves with food, with alcohol, trying to make themselves calm down, marijuana, whatever it is, SSRIs. And so a lot of it is retraining people to feel comfortable. I know it took me when I finally realized I needed to forgive some people, which I did. And I needed to get some help dealing with some of the stuff I'd been through. But I had to learn how to sit quietly, and it took me a long time. I used things like binaural beats, like the float tank, like just making time to go sit in a park and relax and listen to the birds. And it actually takes you time to get comfortable being bored, being with your thoughts. And a lot of people get in a war with their thoughts. They
Mhm.
start racing in their head,
Yeah.
and it took me a while to learn to just observe those thoughts and not engage with them and just observe and learn from these things that come bubbling up. But a lot of people will go round and round in their head with their negative thoughts or negative talk, and it just spins out of control. And then particularly at night, they lay down to sleep and their brain starts racing.
Mhm.
I like to use things like brain dumps. I really encourage people to do some breathing drills before bed, either in child's pose or something like that, or what I call crocodile breathing.
Okay.
Get a piece of paper and write everything that you're struggling with, all your frustrations, dump it on a piece of paper. If you wake up in the middle of the night, do a non-sleep deep rest protocol, do some breathing drills, maybe, put a red light headlamp on and read a book, just to get yourself in a calm state so you can go back to sleep. But most people end up in a state where they're just in this constant mind circus. And then they start trying to medicate themselves with food, with behaviors. And,
Mm.
and a lot of times the brain is doing that because the brain is so used to being in a stress state. When it starts to calm down and relax, it doesn't feel comfortable. It's kind of like driving on the Autobahn or driving on a major freeway and you're used to driving 150, 160 kilometers an hour. miles an hour for our American friends. And all of a sudden you come up to a school zone and you're asked to drive like 15, 20 kilometers an hour. And it feels really uncomfortable because you've been used to going so fast. And that's pretty much our modern world in a nutshell.
Hmm. That's really very interesting, Jim. You,
Yeah, so we have a lot of people that are stuck in a loop, and we really have to give them things to help them. And a lot of people use exercise too. They'll use high intensity exercise to make them temporarily feel better, and they'll get that big cortisol response, but then they're left exhausted and beat up after that.
Nicaragua.
great. So you live a very outdoor oriented life, and how has your connection to nature influenced your philosophy on wellness, particularly the idea of stillness?
Yeah. Well, I think sunlight and nature have a huge impact on our biology. You know, if you look at studies, you look at stress, psychological stress, just pictures of nature in someone's office or having plants in your office has a huge effect on your overall well-being. So what happens if you actually get out in nature? If you look at the Western countries, particularly in the US back in the 60s and 70s, where they didn't have an obesity problem, most people were spending more time outdoors. They were going to the beach, they were mowing their grass, they were spending time outdoors. Most people worked an outdoor job. As people moved indoors under artificial lights, they're up late at night watching a screen. Just Google circadian rhythm and health, circadian rhythm and cancer, circadian rhythm and heart disease. And you'll see most of these diseases have a strong link to a broken circadian rhythm, just like a night shift worker. If you look at what's happening in India right now, you've got people that have been healthy for decades, centuries, and all of a sudden the tech companies move in and they start working indoors and they're eating the same diet, they're living the same lifestyle, other than that they're standing all day in front of a screen. And we're seeing a diabetes epidemic in India, in regions where people generally have been healthy for centuries. And blood pressure rates are going up all over the world. And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that we're just not getting enough sun. We're not getting outdoors. We're spending most of our day, the average American spends 97% of their day indoors. Children, maximum security prisoners get more outdoor time today than the average child in the US.
Yes. I think it's a global epidemic, and it's going to increase because there has been a
Yep.
study done on children that, if even 2 hours or 3 hours of or 1 hour of outdoor activity can definitely help them improve their eyesight. And that's why nowadays children are getting, spectacles, lenses
Yeah.
at the age of 3 or 4, maybe.
Yeah.
That's really too
Yeah,
early.
yeah. Well, and if they're handing screens as a babysitter to the kid right away, right? The Japan is a huge example of this. They have a massive myopia epidemic, and
Exactly.
they found that getting kids outdoors in natural light it really helps with that. So, we're really setting kids up. We're setting people up for disaster with our modern world. And I'm not saying that we need to go back to the Stone Age, but for me, like I know we're not doing the video recording of this, but I'm doing this podcast on my patio
Yeah.
where I have a beautiful rainforest in front of me, and I can look out as I do the podcast and look in the distance. I'm getting natural light. I'm not indoors. So one of the reasons I moved to Nicaragua is so I could live a more outdoor life, live a simpler life. I don't have to work as much as I would if I was in the US.
Mhm.
So that's one of the reasons I moved here. But there's simple ways, like have your, in the United States, it's really interesting. I would be in the United States and like in Kentucky where I lived for 20 years, and it would be a beautiful day, beautiful temperature. It'd be the spring or early summer, and I'd be at a restaurant and I'd be eating outdoors, and everyone else would be in line to go inside to sit in the air conditioning, the temperature controlled area. If you look at Europe, they tend to eat outdoors a lot more. They tend to walk outside a lot. So they don't tend to have, and their food is better too. They tend to not have the obesity rates that they do in the US. And so, there's simple things you can do. Like if you have the opportunity to eat outside, park your car out, distance from the store and walk. Try and walk more, get outside multiple times a day. Most particularly, get the lights off at night. I mean, that's so important. Artificial light, bright lights at night, just absolutely destroy your health. And that's very well documented. So it's not like you have to go back to the Stone Age, but if you have the opportunity, if you work virtually, work on your patio, like find a way to get outside. And it's much better for you to be outdoors under natural light with a screen than it is to be in your house. There's so many simple things you can do to counter this, and getting outside multiple times a day. We really encourage people to walk 10 minutes after every meal outside, breathing through your nose. It's more of an observation exercise than it is exercise. I think teaching people to relax is one of the most important things we can do when we're working with someone in an exercise program. There's nothing wrong with hard work, but we also have to have the opposite of that. We have to be able to shut off and relax so that our bodies can recover and regenerate.
Absolutely. And you have mentioned the desire to build an outdoor gym in Nicaragua. So, how do
Yes.
you envision this space reflecting your philosophy of integrating fitness with nature and silence?
Yes. Well, I really love it. I love working out outdoors. I love working out outside. I really felt guilty when I was in the US when I learned about the importance of circadian rhythm on my own health. Um, that basically I was bringing people indoors after they'd spent all day indoors to work out. And there's things I did to counter that. I added some red lights to my gym. I kept the doors open, the windows open more often. But I don't want to be a hypocrite. I live what I preach. And, hopefully people can learn from my experience and integrate some of this stuff into their life. And our patients and clients definitely notice the difference when they make getting outdoors a priority. But, for myself, I want to be able to train outdoors most of the time. I want to be able to bring people here that come visit me to train with me. I want them to be able to work out outdoors. And a lot of climates, it's very difficult to do that. And so that's why I encourage people to get outside and walk as much as they can, even if they can't work out outdoors.
Mhm.
But I really just want to live an authentic life, and I want to live preach. I don't want to be one of these people that say you need to do this, this, and this, and I'm not doing it myself. So, and it's very affordable to buy things and build things here. In the United States, it's very difficult to get, say beachfront property, or many times the climate here is very favorable to working out outdoors constantly. Most of the people here spend their entire day outdoors. Most of the people here live outdoors. The only time they ever go inside is when they sleep, and they have like open windows and they have fans, and they have very few lights. So they live a more authentic life, and that's really what I'm trying to do. And I'm really trying to spread the awareness that people just need to get outdoors. I have a t-shirt brand, Nika Barbell, that you can go to nikabarbell.com to check those out. But it says, like, part of the motto of that is reminding humans they need to get outdoors. And so that's really my main passion, and my focus is bringing, I brought that in. I work with Dr. Leland Stillman, who's a medical doctor. I brought group coaching into the medical practice. We have a coaching practice, and really just bringing awareness and reminding people, hey, you need to get outside. You've evolved in nature. You need to spend more time in nature. That's really my number one focus now, is just for getting the word out there so that people can feel better and be more healthy and be more self-aware.
That's really, really encouraging and empowering. So, Jim, training smarter, not harder. It's your
Yes.
motto. How do stillness
Mhm.
and mindfulness play a role in achieving better physical health without pushing
Mhm.
ourselves too hard?
Well, what it does is it allows you to rest and digest. If you don't take the time to relax, if you don't take the time to rest, you're not going to recover, right? And training is all about adaptation. So, one, is the training you're doing driving the adaptation that you want, or are you just doing it to make yourself tired? A lot of people will just train to be exhausted so they can fall asleep at night.
Mhm.
So we want to use the right dosage to get the result that we want. And then two, if you're never shutting off, your body is not going to prioritize recovery of muscle, recovery of your nervous system, digestion. If you're in a survival state, a survival mode, revving your car all the time, your body's going to prioritize survival over, building resilience. And I don't want people just to sit around all day and do nothing, but I want people to work hard when they work hard, and I want people to rest hard when they rest hard. And with business people and things like that, high powered attorneys, doctors, we have them do things like, take a restorative yoga class, go do a float tank session once a week, do an acupuncture session. Make time throughout the week. If you're working in an office building, a lot of people take cigarette smoke breaks. You
Yeah.
take a sun break. You go outside, you get your eyes in the light, you get your skin in the light. And so making time for calm and quiet, even a 10-minute non-sleep deep rest program in the afternoon is going to make a huge difference. Little things like putting the tongue in the roof of your mouth and just breathing through your nose and slowing your breathing down and breathing less is going to make a huge difference over the course of a month, a year. If you can reduce your respiratory rate by several breaths per minute over the course of a year, that's hundreds of thousands of breaths that you're saving. And you're going to be much more efficient. You're going to be calmer. You're going to have more resources to put towards hormone production and muscle building. Whereas if you're constantly over breathing, you're constantly in a stress state, your body's going to take those resources and put it towards cortisol and just surviving instead of thriving.
Wow. I loved that idea. Instead of taking smoke break, take sun break. I absolutely love that idea because sitting inside 8, 9 hours without any sunlight, it really affects your eyesight. It
Yeah.
weakens down you mentally and physically as well because sunlight is a very good source of vitamin D. So that's a
Yes.
very good advice for all of us, and I encourage all our listeners to inculcate this practice if you're working in the daytime. So lovely, Jim. Golden nuggets. So before we
Thank
wrap
you.
up,
Mhm.
many people associate fitness and intensity with noise. Many, in fact, I also do that. Gyms, music, metal or rock music or something like that. Hustle. How do you help your clients shift their mindset to understand the power of silence and being still in their fitness journey?
Well, one of the things I do is I help them become present when they come into the gym. We do some breathing drills just to kind of bring them present and to calm them down so they can learn. And I do a lot of the skill work at the beginning of the session so that they can learn new things. When you're all amped up and you're under stress, it's very difficult for you to learn. So we incorporate relaxation at the beginning of the session. We work on skill work, and then we get them warmed up when they're ready and ready to train. And then we will train hard. We will use music. But I tell people, if your long-term goal is to look good and feel good and perform well, you want to flirt with performance, not marry it. So I always tell people to just push themselves enough to get better and leave a little in the tank and string a bunch of really good workouts together instead of just annihilating yourself every time you go in. Right. So sometimes we're going to train a little harder. Sometimes we're going to train less. We're going to make it more about recovery and more about feeling good. So we want to vary the level of intensity, and then we really want to focus on at the end. I'll get people on the floor, I'll put their feet on the wall at a 90-degree angle. We'll do some relaxing, calming drills. We'll do crocodile breathing. We'll do
Mhm.
some things that help them, particularly with children. A minute of crocodile breathing on the floor, and I'll tell them to just quiet your mind, melt into the floor, pretend like you're going to sleep, just so we can shut off the nervous system. A lot of people will go to the gym, they'll train really hard, and they'll just walk out of the gym and they're still revved up, and it takes them hours, particularly if they're using caffeine or pre-workout, which I'm not a big fan of. They will, have a hard time relaxing, and they'll take that revved up, energy home, and it just delays the recovery process from the training because you're only as good as your body's ability to recover from the stress that you put it under.
True. It's true. Superb, Jim. That was really a very insightful conversation and a lot of new things, basic, but commonly ignored facts we got to know from this insightful conversation. So, thank you so much for coming today and helping us understand the importance, the power of silence and stillness.
You're very welcome. I appreciate what you're doing, and thank you for having me on and allowing me to share with your listeners. I hope you have a wonderful day.
Definitely. And Jim, before we wrap up, how can our listeners connect with you and explore how you are spreading the word about the power of outdoor and also silence and stillness?
Well, you can go to my YouTube channel, my Instagram channel. My Instagram channel is Jim Laird, GYM. I named my gym in Kentucky after, like, I kind of did a play on words, which never
Mhm.
name a business after yourself, particularly if you're looking at selling it one day. Not a good strategy. But my Instagram is GYM LAIRD. You can just Google Jim Laird, JIM LAIRD on YouTube. It'll pop up. You can go over to Stillman Wellness. That's where our coaching program is, www.stillmanwellness.com. We have a quick start guide if you're confused and overwhelmed with all the crazy health information out there, /quick start. That'll get you our quick start guide. Dr. Stillman and I do a weekly webinar that's private that you have to be on our email list. We send an email out every Wednesday. You can join that webinar. We're able to share a lot of information that we can't share on YouTube or Instagram because it tends up getting you censored or banned. So it's great to get on our email list and get on that. And we have some coaching programs. If you need additional help, we have a monthly membership that you can join. And we have additional coaching on top of that. And if you're in the US, in Florida, or in New York, or if you want to travel to see Dr. Stillman, we have a medical practice, which is stillmanmd.com, and we can work with you on the medical side as well. So that's how you can get in touch with me. And thank you for having me on.
Lovely, lovely. We'll mention all the details in the show notes for our listeners to refer to. And Jim, once again, thank you so much. And thank you for sharing your approach to combine fitness, mindfulness, and nature. It's truly, truly inspiring.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you and what you're doing.
And listeners, if you want to learn more about how you can integrate stillness into your own fitness and wellness journey, be sure to follow Jim's work. You can refer to the show notes along with this episode on your favorite podcast platform. Whether it's through training smarter or simply taking a moment to be still, there's something we can all learn from Jim's approach to mindful living. So, thanks everyone for tuning into this episode, and we'll see you next time on the Mindful Living Podcast. This is your host, Sana, signing off.